Good morning. It's Sunday morning here at ANBRWY, and that means another Talking with Live. And today we are talking live with Brandyn Cox. He is
How are we
an
doing today?
owner. Good. How are you?
I'm doing outstanding.
Awesome. Well, you are the owner and enrolled agent of your own accounting firm,
Yes.
BMC Accounting, LLC. Where are you located at?
So I'm actually in Toledo, Ohio, but I do business pretty much every day in most every state so far.
And that's what it means to be an enrolled agent. You can help anyone,
Right.
anywhere.
Yeah, one of the major benefits of being an enrolled agent is that it's a federal license. So it's the only type of profession actually that the IRS actually tests. Unlike CPAs or tax attorneys, it might be restricted by some of their state requirements. But I get to work nationally, so I can help people in very many different states. And there's usually probably about 15 or 20 states that I have most of my clients in. So I'm kind of all over the place.
So why did you choose to go? And I'm going to get into when you were younger and everything that led up to where you are right now. But I'm
Mhm.
curious, why did you choose to go the enrolled agent route and not CPA?
Sure. So the main reason was when I was in school is when I had actually started this business, and the whole point of it was to be in lieu of an internship. And I thought that that was going to be a successful venture. Turned out to be that nobody really seemed to be very thrilled about somebody starting their own business and then trying to get hired in to work for a CPA firm. One of the things you have to do in order to get your CPA license, at least in Ohio, is that you have to have 150 credit hours, which I would have had, but you also have to work under another CPA for a few years in order to pass that exam, be able to sit for the exam and pass all the different parts of it. And that wasn't something I was going to be capable of doing if I'm working on my own. I don't have another CPA that I can work with. So I took the more tax specialized route and I took the enrolled agent tests and examinations, and that's what I went through for that.
And how many people out there are confused between the difference between enrolled agent and CPA?
Right. So I am constantly doing enrolled agent education. So a lot of people don't know what they are. They've never heard of EAs or know what they do. So I pretty much give them a quick breakdown like, hey, I'm a federally licensed tax professional. I'm able to practice in any state. And I do, bookkeeping, payroll, taxes, the whole shebang, everything that a CPA or a tax attorney does. And in fact, I actually have the same unrestricted representation rights that they hold as well, too.
Hmm. Well, let's go backwards for a little bit. Let's rewind. Let's
Mhm.
think back when you were a young boy and you were thinking about what your life was going to be when you were finally an adult. What was that dream that you had?
So growing up, I always really wanted to be a police officer. So I mean, that was something that was kind of ever since I was like two. I was always playing with like cop toys and things of that genre. So it was only natural that as I grew older, I always wanted to get into the military to become a military police officer, and that's kind of where I thought my success in my life was going to be. Is I would go into the military, I go be an MP for so many years, go probably on a deployment, and then come back and become a police officer for whether it be state highway patrol or some local unit or anything like that. And that's kind of where I thought that success was going to be for me, and it turned out to be much different.
So, when did you decide to go into the Army?
hmm So I always knew that I was going to join the military. I wasn't sure which branch I really wanted to go into. I always had Army as kind of like my number one, just because they were the only ones, at least at the time, that would guarantee a job. So as long as you passed like their ASVAB, that you would be able to choose what job you specifically wanted. But the other branches didn't necessarily, make that part of a contract. They might say, yeah, you're at the needs of the Marine Corps or the Air Force or whatever. But if Army, if I say, hey, I want to be an MP and you pass the test or whatever, then you can go in to be an MP. And that was exactly what I wanted. So I didn't really want to go in thinking I would do one thing and then get something different instead.
Right. And so you joined Army, you became an MP.
Yep.
What year was that?
That was 2007. So now that's what, 12 years ago, almost to yeah, just about 12 years exactly now.
I'm hitting getting very close to my 20 year.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. And you had boots on the ground while you were in, correct?
What's that?
You had boots on the ground while you were in. You went overseas. You deployed.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I went to Afghanistan 2010 to 2011. And that was right during the time that President Obama had made a push for an extra 30,000 troops to go to Afghanistan. And I got to be one of those out of that 30,000. It was funny because I was actually stationed in Germany, my first duty station. And, at the time I was single. I didn't have really any need to go anywhere else. I was like, well, why don't I try to go to Korea? So I sent an email to Branch looking to get even the 2-year hardship tour. And I got a one sentence reply back that said, you're going to Fort Drum, New York to meet up your unit to go to Iraq. And then, of course, as I got to Fort Drum, they were obviously not in Iraq. They're like, oh, yeah, we're leaving in 3 weeks to go to Afghanistan. So it was quite, the first half of the time I was in the military, I wasn't even in the U.S.
And did anything happen while you were in the military to decide your shift into accounting, or did that happen later?
It really happened more so later, because I really started to use the military as a way to build my career path forward going into civilian law enforcement. Because after I came back from Afghanistan, I worked, your typical line unit that you would do. You go out to the field and do training and whatnot for a couple months. I got my E5. And then I ended up going on to the Criminal Investigation Division's drug team. So that was an opportunity for me to go do some overt and covert drug work for the military and use that as kind of like a nice little resume bullet for when I got out. And that was what I had always planned on doing afterwards too. So now the military didn't really give me much going towards accounting, to be honest with you.
None at all. So when you got out, what was your first action that you took when you got out of the Army?
Sure. So, of course, when you're transitioning out, the first thing that's always on your mind is money, right? So you got to be able to make a living. And when I got out in 2013, I thought that I was going to do like, some probably retail or sales or something like that. So I went and worked at a place called ABC Warehouse. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. I don't know if it's a regional thing, but it's basically a department store that sells like appliances and whatnot. And the job was just god awful. I worked there for 2 weeks. I couldn't stand it. You didn't make very much money. And the people were really not a pleasure to work with. They didn't hold the same values that I had been used to for the past 6 years. So I really struggled with trying to find something to work for. And then I was like, okay, well, I need to find something maybe geared towards law enforcement. So then I worked at Macy's for a loss prevention officer, actually. And I only did that for a month, too, because it was the same thing. The environment wasn't that great. It's not something I was used to, and it was very, very low paying. I had no benefits. So I decided at that time that college was going to have to be my best option to really use my GI Bill.
Why didn't you go into a police department, a sheriff's department? Why was that not the move? If that was your path.
Mm-hmm. So the way that it would work, at least here where I'm at, and every state's going to be a little bit different, but in Ohio, most departments will not hire you unless you have what's called the OPATA, Ohio Peace Officer Training Academy. It's the police academy certificate, right? So you have to either pay for that out of pocket or you go through a college or whatever, and you can do it there. So that was my goal, is I was going to go through college, collect the housing and education, and then I thought maybe that would make me more suitable for employment, and then also, maybe I can get on an agency that would pay for that. I surely didn't have the money for it at the time, but that just was not happening. In fact, I even went through the hiring process for the Ohio State Highway Patrol before I switched over to accounting, all the way through to pass the polygraph examination, and then I got cut from it.
And when you started school, you were working during the course of school, you were working at the Veterans Hospital, right?
Yeah.
In housekeeping and maintenance.
Right. Yeah, so that was my last job before I went full-time self-employed into my company. Is I was actually doing college full-time. I was working at the Department of Veterans Affairs Hospital full-time, and I was working on building my business at the same time. In fact, I did a lot of my work would actually get done at the VA sometimes. When you got downtime, you take calls and do the things that you have to do.
And when you were going to school, for criminal justice. That was your
right.
Plan. That was your goal.
Yep, up until about 2016, 2017. So yeah, about 2.5, 3 years into college, I actually made a swap to go to accounting. Actually, I only have one more class left, and I could have a bachelor's in criminal justice, but I decided, at this point, it's just not worth it. But I took an accounting elective, and they just talked about like income statements and balance sheets, and they talked about how everything is linked together. And I was like, this is kind of cool. I can see, how this would be maybe a better career path than something in criminal justice, because I was not doing very well trying to be able to get a job as a police officer, and I knew corrections was not where I wanted to go. I didn't want to go into probation, so I was pretty narrowed in what I would have been able to do if I stayed in the criminal justice field, and just wasn't panning out. So I switched over to accounting, and I really haven't looked back.
So would you say that was your driving force, financial?
So yeah, I'd say it was initially to make the first change, to go from one thing that I've been working for the last 10 years for. Yeah, that really would have been the major push, would have been securing some sort of life afterwards.
And outside of just being able, the way accounting works and everything being linked together, and there's an analytical part to that, there's a data part to that. What was it that really drew you to do this?
Okay. Yeah. So actually, it was right after I had started my company, because, like I said, I did it in lieu of an internship, thinking that was going to help me. But one of the things that actually came out of that is my first client was actually my next door neighbor across the street from me. So he owns a landscaping company, and he was not doing very well with his bookkeeping or any of his taxes or anything like that. And I was at this point like maybe 2/3 of the way through the accounting program. And I was like, well, let's see if what I'm learning in school is actually going to apply. And I was able to backdate his books for like 2 years worth. And I did it relatively quick. And I didn't even use software. I did it the old school way, hand jamming it. So it was almost like I was going back in time trying to do this. And I really enjoyed it. And what was really great about it is when I got done, I was able to show him that, hey, you're actually losing some money here. We need to figure out ways to solve this, so that way you don't go under in the next year. Because in Ohio, at least with landscaping companies, it's seasonal work. It's not like down in maybe Texas where it's always a lot warmer. Ohio, we have all 4 seasons, sometimes in one day. But so eventually the heavy season for him would stop, and I didn't want to see his business fail. And he was on that path of doing it. It was kind of that moment of knowing that you're able to do something for somebody, really help them out, not just get their books in order, but really make sure that they're going to be okay too. And that just seemed like really, really cool aspect to me.
So you're taking accounting and you're going above and beyond. You're taking it past. You're not just doing the accounting needs of companies. You're finding a way for them to sustain growth.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So that's one of the nice things, is that when you're able to really sit down with like a small business owner and say, hey, look, this is what's going on with your company. I can see that A, B, and C are happening. A really great example is lease payments. A lot of times people will lease equipment because, they may not have enough credit to buy something to finance a property or a piece of equipment. And they don't understand that built into that lease payment is a massive interest payment. And I would show them like, hey, if you would go out and buy this at even a really bad interest rate, it's still better than the interest rate you're paying for this to rent it, and you're not getting any benefit out of it. So, there's ways to save money, thousands of dollars every month very, very quickly but you got to know what to look for.
And your clientele, are they mostly small business entrepreneurs? Are they large businesses, medium-sized businesses, or do you have a book of business that kind of runs across all levels?
Okay. Yeah. So most of my clients make somewhere between 5 million a year in revenue and less. So I would say small to the larger small businesses. When you start getting into the 8-figure businesses, that's well beyond what one person really can handle. There's no way that one person can handle that amount of volume. My business has grown too. I actually have hired my first employee a couple weeks ago, and she's doing quite well. But I still got some more room to grow until I can get to those larger corporate type of clients. But I really like the small business because of the personal connection you make. Unlike where you work for somebody in a larger company, you might have a connection as a liaison with somebody, and that manager gets promoted or moves and gone, and then you got to build up a new relationship with somebody again and again and again. It just doesn't have, to me, the same weight and same benefit that you do when you talk with small business owners. You're always going to talk to the owner. It's someone that's a very major key player in the business and actually will listen to your advice.
Right, because it's necessary for
Right.
them to be around in a year or two.
Yeah.
Is that
Exactly.
also part of your drive, that you like to stay in this industry, that you're really getting down on the ground floor with someone and figuring out a way to make their vision an actual reality for them?
Yeah, it's one of the things that I think make me the most happy about the way that I've chosen how to guide my life now. Because it's unfortunate, but I have seen a couple businesses fold under, and it was just because they were very lax or very poor with their bookkeeping or tax reporting. They didn't really pay attention to it, and by the time I got around, they were basically on life support, and I was doing what I could to keep them sustained for where they're going. Sometimes that really happens, so you get to learn some of the same time the lessons of what happens with other companies, even if, like, let's say you have a construction company and then you have a real estate investor, right? So two different people, two different type of industries, but the lessons you can learn from one you apply to the other, and a lot of times people just don't think about that. Oh, well, that's a different industry, that doesn't apply to me. Well, yes, it probably will, actually. And it's kind of cool to be able to see how one principle or one element does really work for everybody or doesn't work for everybody.
So you've been able to, would you call it fall into, or did you make a cognizant choice? Like, no, this is going to be the way my life is. This is going to be my definition of success from here on
I,
out.
I think that really came about after I had one of my, I guess, my last efforts at trying to get into like an actual corporate position instead of being a small business owner myself. I went out, they did the wine and dine. They take you to the 5-star restaurant, you do the interview with them, and you meet all the owners and partners in the business. And this is a very large company. And, I was pretty impressed. I thought I had it. And then a couple of weeks go by. And of course, you get the generic email. Sorry, you have not been selected for this position, or whatever, excuse they give you. I was like, well, the only way that I'm going to get anywhere at this point is if I do it myself, because I know that I can do what I want to do, and I know that I'm going to be able to build connections with the people that I like and work from that. So I think that was really the kind of thing I realized it's time to take this on a further path and a much more, boots on the ground approach, rather than just hoping that this will lead me elsewhere.
So how do you align this? Because there are people out there that's watching. You went out for internships, you weren't getting internships, so you started your own path. You're like, fine, I'll figure it out from here, thanks. And then you start interviewing for corporations, and they very diplomatically say thanks but no thanks, and you're like, that's fine, I'm going to keep going. How do you keep the confidence that you're going to be able to rise above that you're going to be able to continue to grow? How do you, because there are people out there that are, I believe, on the line of starting something on their own, and they go and they look for that reinforcement of expertise, knowledge, ability. And if you're not getting it from over there, how do you manifest that, or how do you muster that yourself?
Right. And I think that, maybe it's just in my circumstance. And I think that this would actually be a lot of people's too, is that you don't have many other routes. So like I had mentioned, I've been trying to get, whether it was criminal justice or into accounting or other corporate jobs, and I just wasn't getting taken. So my options were running kind of limited on what I could do to have a somewhat decent lifestyle without, making only $10 or $11 an hour for the rest of my life. I knew that that's not what I wanted to be like. And I think that was kind of always in the back of my mind, is like, all right, well, you have a lot on the line for this, but at the same time, you don't really have that much to lose. I mean, if the business doesn't take off, it doesn't go the way you plan. I mean, you're still just where you're at now. You're not going to go further down, because, I was fortunate enough to be able to do a full-time job while I was still making my business. And that doesn't always happen for everybody. So, in those cases, it's even more difficult, I think, than what I had to go through.
Well, what I find interesting is that you had companies that were saying thanks but no thanks after meeting you and seeing what you could do. And you're not someone that's not a big deal. You're kind of a big deal. I mean, I just going through, you are getting so many reviews on how much you're just helping people, and how the words that are being used, brilliant, just amazing. I couldn't have done this without him. If you need any help, any advice, you need to go see Brandyn Cox. And it's very interesting to me that the larger corporations that you would sit down with would not want to just
make
you part of their team.
Right. And I think it's a different line of thinking. And I think it shows, like with what you're talking about, how it's very flattering to be able to hear a lot of other people be very happy with what I've done to be able to help them, or even just simple advice, even if they don't ever end up paying me for any services. And I think that right there is the key, is that I'm willing to take the time to talk to somebody and maybe explain something that nobody else is going to, because they're like, well, here's my retainer, go ahead and hit that first, and then we can go ahead and talk. And even then, I may not do as great of a job. It's like, why would you want to go handle those people? And I think that that's where, like when you think of, think of the most basic companies like Liberty Tax and H&R Block, right? They don't generally they're not known for customized and well built out plans. They're kind of the, and I don't mean it in a bad way, but they're like the Walmart of accounting. You go in, you pay cheap price, you get in, you get out. That's
Right.
their business model, and that's just not how I run mine. And I have a different line of thinking with dealing with business owners, because it matters to them. If you make a mistake and you miss something, that could have been $2,000, out of more than taxes that they should have paid. Well, for a very big company, $2,000 isn't much, but for somebody that's only bringing in a little bit, and that's how they feed their family, $2,000, that's a whole month's pay maybe for somebody. Very big deal. It's very important, and it's cool to get to see those kind of wins. I like seeing those.
Well, this is the second time you and I have actually spoken.
Mm-hmm.
And both times I've walked away going, there's so much more I can learn from this gentleman. But he's on it. He completely understands. And a lot of people that are going out and venturing, they have this great idea, this vision, and then they get started and they're working on the mechanics of building a brand or a company, or what the day-to-day operations, but they're not really looking at, they're hoping the money will come, but they're
Right.
not, they're not really, I don't think, every day looking at the inflow and outflow of what they're spending versus what kind of return that they're going to get. And
Yeah.
we're actually getting, oh, okay. We got a couple of comments. Lisa's with us. Hi, Lisa. I'm glad that you can hear us now.
Hey, Lisa. Yeah, glad to have you hop in here. It was nice talking to you before.
Yeah, and she says she's going to use you for her taxes precisely because you were willing to talk to her earlier when she started her company.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's important, and that might be the big reason. I'm glad that you didn't get any offer letters. Quite honestly, I think you're on the path that you're supposed to be on.
I agree. And it was kind of funny too, because when you go to sit for the EA examinations, they use the company Prometric. So like those are the people that go out and you have to go and you do the examinations, and it's a 3-part test to be able to get your EA license. And what was really funny is that last interview that I was telling you about with the company that did the wine and dining, I met the partners and owners. They were literally the next building over. So when I got done with my last part of my EA exam, I just kind of sat there and laughed in the parking lot, like, well, you're lost,
Right. It's the path that we all take to get where we're going to go, our ultimate success, our contentment, if you will. I think is a very interesting one. And you have definitely not taking the one of least resistance. You have hit the obstacles, you've overcome them, and you've forged your own path. What advice would you give someone else that is teetering kind of on, they have a decision to make, to abandon what they're doing because they're not feeling the traction, it wasn't what they thought it was going to be, and they're ready to abandon it, or they have a choice to forge on and keep going? What would be your first piece of advice to them?
I think my first piece of advice, and it would probably be, I guess, a little unorthodox, is make sure that you have a lot of support. It's not easy if you're going to do this by yourself when you're at that, I call it the critical point. So that's the point where you're doing your business, or you're trying to get this business or this dream launched off the ground. But at the same time, you have the other life, a full-time job or a family to take care of. You really need to make sure that you have that support before you even get into it. And if you don't have the support, then you're going to have to make the tough decision whether or not, going towards something that could be a massive failure or a very good success is worth going towards. And it's going to be a different answer for every single person on to whether or not it really is necessary. And the other thing too is just because you have a really great idea, unfortunately, doesn't always mean that it's going to pan out. I look at bad ideas, right? So like, look, my favorite bad idea I think of is the pet rock, right? That was the stupidest thing ever, but that dude made a ton of money, right? But it was short-lived. So, and I would hope that that guy would have realized that when you started this, like, hey, making money, that's a cash cow, move on, go out, do something else. You may have to realize that or tweak your business model or whatnot just to make sure that it stays sustainable. If you stay concrete and don't adapt or innovate or move anything, you're never going to get anywhere, and you really have to make that action.
Business is fluid. I mean, it's living. It
Yeah.
has to be able to move and breathe and grow, or it's
Mm-hmm.
going to wilt.
Right.
What about those that are going out there and they started out strong, but now they're in that moment, one that you referenced earlier. They're not seeing any money coming in. They're having money going out, and then they're trying to reinvest in the business. Maybe it's marketing, maybe it's equipment, personnel, whatever that looks like. And they're at that moment. What does that moment look like where you would walk in and go, stop, we need to pinpoint the bleeding, we need to stop the bleeding, we need to
Right.
regroup?
Yeah, so I would say that the first thing I would look for then is obviously their expenses and why, what trends, and if you can't answer the trend, and then it means you don't have the paperwork to back it up either. Because when you have like, let's say a simple profit and loss or income statement, right? If it's at least somewhat well put together and by month, not just one time a year, you can actually see where there might be peaks and valleys. And then you can go, okay, now let's take another further step into this. What did you do in March that was different than you did in May? Or what type of season is this in March versus May or whatever? So you can kind of build things in together, go, okay, well, you know that you're going to have increased revenue here, and then you're going to drop down for the next 4 months. Well, you have to build up 12 months worth of income in March to sustain the next quarter because it's going to eat more than that. So you have to be able to see the trends because revenue and income or revenue and expenses do not follow a parallel line. Many times they cross. Hopefully the goal is to always have revenue higher, but it doesn't always happen that way. And if it doesn't, you need to know why does that happen.
Are all enrolled agents also business analysts, trend analysis? I mean, are you
No.
are you adding that on a la carte?
Yeah, it's pretty much. So it's funny because I do a lot of services that people just wouldn't really think of. Like, for one, right? So if you need to start a business, I mean, you could start with me from day one into the day you sell your business. Granted that you don't get so huge that you would outgrow a 1-person or 2-person operation, but I file articles of organization. And we think about this, and you go, okay, well, I can go to like LegalZoom and do that, right, for like $200 or $300. So about the same. I charge about the same amount plus the state filing fees. But what you don't get, especially for these brand new business owners, is any sort of indication about what does that LLC mean? What is this S corp? What did you just do? How do you run this? How do you pay yourself? What's deductible? What's not deductible? Major consequences. So one of the things I put in with as like part of that package when you would start a business with me is an hour consultation just to learn about the most basic of taxes and accounting. And if you need to get like QuickBooks set up, we set QuickBooks up so you know what's going on and how to properly keep track of your stuff. So enrolled agents don't necessarily do this because they don't all have an accounting background where they went to school for it. Some just went through the test and that's all they know. But that doesn't give you the full picture. It's just like having a bookkeeper that doesn't know anything about taxes. They're not going to be able to give you any sound advice or know what's going on without the other half. There's 2 portions in accounting, and you really got to at least have a good fundamental basis in both of them.
What is that character? What is that trait that you have in you that you are consistently going above and beyond and giving more than what's expected to your clients outside of what your industry might traditionally offer?
Sure. I think the characteristic trait in that is innovation. One of my favorite cases I like to look back at is, and it wasn't even all that long ago, is look at Netflix, right? Netflix and Blockbuster. So Blockbuster didn't do any innovation. They stayed on their concrete path of just being a brick and mortar store renting out videos, not realizing that very soon the internet was about to very well take them over. So if you don't innovate your business and you stick to one thing, well, then that's only one revenue stream that you can make. So if the only thing I did was taxes, for example, I would have maybe 3 or 4 good months worth of revenue, and then the other 8 or 9 where I have no money coming in, but I still have expenses in my business. Well, how do you supplement that? Other products and services that can also help benefit the clients that are also doing your taxes. So formative business, bookkeeping, payroll, tax strategy and planning, all sorts of different things. You provide as much as possible to your clients. And that goes for any industry, even as a retailer. If you're going to sell the clothes, well, maybe you can design some shirts too. That's something to help bring in extra sources of revenue, especially on the small business end. There's different ways that you can innovate any industry to make more streams of revenue for the same business.
You truly are innovating what anyone that's not in the industry would call accounting firm.
Sure. Yeah.
You're putting a whole new definition to it, and really being able to connect, because I should not be involved in any accounting department anywhere ever. But just speaking to you, I feel like I could probably understand this a little bit, enough to make smarter, more lucrative decisions for my business personally, as long as I have someone with the intelligence such as yourself there. I don't think that's what most people feel like when they are going and looking at an accounting firm to hire.
Right. And then the other thing too is that they always, when you're first starting off, you're kind of bootstrapping. You're not really wanting to spend a lot of money, and of course with any service, if you pay nothing, you're not going to get very much. But at the same time, this is one of those, to me, unique industries where I should be essentially paying for myself. When you think about like tax, here was a really great example. Is just the other day I did a return for somebody, and they were doing rental real estate. So they had a property that they were renting out, a single family home. And he went out and did his own taxes before he had tried to contact me. And the guy owed like $8,500. And I was like, all right, well, let's take a look at it. So I went through and I found extra things like different types of deductions, other credits, or other things that he wasn't doing, like depreciation on the home. And we got him down to about $5,200 that he owed. I didn't charge him $3,000 to do that return, maybe $400 or $500, but he made out $2,500 by hiring me. And that's the thing that I think most people have to consider whenever they're going to outsource anything, whether it's advertising, if it's marketing, if it's accounting, lawyers, is this person bringing me anything that's going to get me more money as a business owner? This isn't you going shopping out for a new hat just to enjoy it. This is something that's got to help you grow. So if you hire someone and they're not being productive, or they're not showing results, you have to snip that relationship or find someone else that will.
And that's a very good point, because I don't think a lot of small business or entrepreneurs that are coming out, and they do need to delegate. They need to find people smarter than them in areas that they're weak in, bring them to the table. But there is a return on that. So if you're going to pay someone that's not a sales, if they're sales, they need to be bringing in the revenue to cover what you're paying them to bring in that sales. But the other areas of business, marketing, accounting, operations, they need to be covering costs on that. Right? Is there always going to be an ROI in business on actions that you do?
I think so. There's always an ROI. It might not be a very good ROI. It might be negative, in fact, but everything has some sort of return on your investment. And, even as simple as, like this BBB sign here, right? It costs me $27 a month because I'm one person. So they only charge, like $27 a month. I've made more than that $27 a month from maybe 3 customers, right? All it takes is a few things to produce that. So if I spend $27 a month times 12 in a year, so that's $300 a year. That might be one small business tax return. It pays for itself. So if I have 2 people that even saw that on BBB and goes, okay, well, that might help make my decision, then that really provides a benefit. And what a lot of times I do after the season is I send out randomized sample surveys to my clients. I won't send them out to necessarily everybody, but I'll send them out and I'll give them a list of different things, and I'm looking for particular things that matter. Like, did BBB matter, right? So like, because we're talking about that. So did the Better Business Bureau, the fact that I was accredited by them and checked out with that, did that help make your decision? And if there was an overwhelming no, then get rid of BBB. They don't do anything for me. What's the point? It's the same thing. Like, if you were going to be a retailer like in e-commerce, did you find me on Facebook? If you had sampled out 2,000 people and 4 people said, yeah, I found you on Facebook, and neither one of those guys made a purchase, stop spending on Facebook. Go elsewhere.
So at what point, where did you learn on doing that, on how to take the temperature of your investments to see if you're getting a return? That's really in the marketing and strategy realm.
Honestly, I got that from my stats class when I was going through statistics initially. It was just kind of cool to see how you could get some basic stuff. And trust me, that is a whole nother field in of itself. I don't even claim to be great at stats. That is a very difficult and very challenging field. But even if you just learn some of the most basic concepts in stats and learning how to properly sample a base, and you don't do it so you get a biased answer, because that really defeats the purpose. You want an honest answer, even if it sucks. Right. At least you can learn something from that, and that's the key element, is you need to learn from it. If you just get upset and discouraged and say, I quit after this, well, then it doesn't matter. Why did you bother doing it?
So all the entrepreneurs out there that might be listening to this, watching this, I'm confident that they're going to be very interested in talking to you, finding more about you. You've already done several podcasts, which they can find. We're going to have your contact information in the comments.
Thank you.
You have a website. You've done, anyone who's involved in the Vetrepreneur Tribe, they can go in and just see the word of mouth, the reviews of the people that you've helped. Could you offer a little bit of advice on those that are in the trenches of what they're doing? May it be a full social media business, may it be brick and mortar or an online business, and they are not doing any sort of analysis, and they're just spending money trying to get the ad revenue, they're trying to get subscribers, or they're trying to get customers, and they are spending dollars on marketing and branding.
Right.
What should they be doing? Where can they collect information to see if any of that is worthwhile and something they should keep doing?
Right. So that is a good question. And really the best way, I think, in my mind, to do that is, first, you need to have some sort of record keeping, preferably not the old school way, because it's very hard to manipulate data. I mean, if you think about like Google, right? Like, let's say they printed off all the information they had. How long would it take to find the simplest piece of info, right? So you have to be able to at least use some sort of technology, whether it's QuickBooks or Xero or, WooCommerce or Shopify, whatever. They all have some helpful analytics, so you should be paying attention to those. And then if you don't know how to use those, or you don't know, or you want to test to make sure that those answers are reliable and they're not just selling their own product, use a third party, go to somewhere else. But the thing that is very, very important with that is you can only get out of that what you put into it. So like if someone comes to me and goes, hey, Brandon, I'd like to know whether or not you think, in your opinion, that A made impact on my business. And if so, why? Or how did it impact my business? If I don't have all the information surrounding your business, it's not going to answer the question entirely. So that's something you have to be able to do, is know all the aspects about your own business. If you're just kind of shooting from the hip with your business, it won't last for long.
No. And I think it's more difficult when you're virtual or your online shop or what have you, and you're trying to reach a broader audience to collect and data mine that. But when you're going into, on the other side of that, when you're going into a brick and mortar business, maybe they're construction, maybe it's a retail business or a restaurant, what's that piece of advice that you would give them?
Right. So I think then at that point, you'd have to really break down and make sure that, like for construction, for example, job costing, it's not something you'd probably do as a business owner, but it's something that you should somewhat do with management. Each job has a cost. Each job that you do, or each action, So like even social media, right? So like let's say that a social media manager is going to have a couple different clients, and one of their clients they're going to have costs that are a burden on the business owner, not the social media management company. You have to be able to know all those different costs. Go, okay, well this client is going to cost me X amount of dollars. So let's say $300 to do this, but how much money am I making out of this? So you have to be able to trace each job. If you just see money in and money out, it doesn't answer the question. You have to allocate it to particular jobs or products or specific services you offer. Everything that you sell should have part of that cost built into it. Nothing should not have any value in it. Everything should be well above cost, otherwise you can't make a profit. And you also have to know how much everything costs.
And this is not something that you need to be putting off on day 2 or week 6. Mm-hmm. You need to start out the gate with this.
Right. And, pricing is fluid. You have to be adaptive to it, but you also need to know where that break even line is or where that no-go zone is, where you don't want to go lower because it's just not worth it. So you have to be able to measure that. And the only way to do that is with some sort of record keeping and data entry.
So those that are out there that have started a business, maybe they're 6 months, a year in, and they haven't really been paying attention to it, would you say that it's too late? Or is this something that they can just start doing today and get that baseline and start building from there?
Sure. You can start whenever. I mean, ideal day to start that is yesterday. So anytime that you're going to start a new action, the best time to do it as soon as it's, well thought out and planned is now. Don't do it hastily. Make sure it's actually put together properly. You have, if you're going to outsource something, whether that is marketing or accounting or, branding or whatever, that, someone in that chain is able to do it proficiently. And then that's where you really need to see it. Okay, well, let's do it now.
And you are about to, on that, I won't keep trying to bleed you for free advice, but you are coming up on an anniversary of your business.
Yeah, so I actually started my business in June or July of 2017. So this is actually getting ready to be the close of my second year. And it's very cool to see where I started on day one to where I'm going now. And it makes me very excited to see where even a year from now or 2 years or 5 years from now goes. I have big plans and big dreams for this company, but you have to take it day at a time. So I just keep trying to do the same thing that everybody else is doing.
So you're applying the principles. You are definitely applying principles that you are asking others to do in your own business. So your kind of proof is in the pudding, mm-hmm. right? You are practicing what you're preaching, what you're teaching to other individuals. But even doing that and being able to look at the analytics, being able to look at the trends and make smart decisions based on that data and those trends, does the growth and the momentum that BMC Accounting has, does that some days even surprise you?
Right. And I'm no different than any other business. There'll be a couple of days where I might not get an invoice paid. I just didn't make any money for 2 or 3 days. And then there's a couple of days where it's like everybody and their brother just happens to be in front of me. Business runs that way. It's interesting. It comes into waves, and the thing that make it sustainable and successful or maintainable is what did you just do to help change that other than outside circumstances that you can't control. So you have to be able to see that. And I don't know, it's kind of cool to be able to see that momentum go up and down and up and down. It's just like the stock market. If you look over time, it goes up and down, up and down, up and down. It hopefully, you just like any other business, you want it to always eventually keep going up, but there's going to be dips in it too.
How do you keep your sanity through those ups and downs?
I honestly, I think that just has to do with a lot of mental training from being in the military has helped me out with that. Just honestly, a lot of it is ignoring some of the bad things that come to you or accepting them. If like, for example, I did make a mistake the other day, just for a good example. I quoted somebody a price way back in April. Well, it's July now. I don't remember that price. So I went to go charge them for, the service that they got. And it was, quite a bit more, because I had forgotten about this long time ago thing. And I go, oh, you know what? All right, fine. I can see the evidence in it. I'll honor it and refund a portion of it to you. So, that's just part of the way it's going to go.
Wow. And you are very active in the veteran community. you're still outreaching, you're still serving your fellow vets.
Mhm.
Is that always going to be a component and a cornerstone? Is that part of the thing that keeps continuing to drive you and motivate you?
Right. I really like working kind of with our own kind. It's a different type of person when you speak to someone who's been in the military. Not that there's anything wrong with those that haven't. It's just they see the world maybe a little differently, and it's not like that for everybody. But I don't know. It's just cool to always have like an instant small connection with somebody. You can meet somebody on the street randomly, two people, one being that had served in the military and one that had not. And the chances are, if you both served, whether they were 40 years difference and apart, there's going to be so much more that you can connect to on a personal level. And I think that that's very important in any business is personal connection. So I really enjoy that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not your vertical to say. You are servicing industries and individuals across the nation.
Right.
But I see you um, giving just attention and care in our closed groups with other veterans. You can
Yeah.
tell that it's something that's really important to continue to serve for you.
Right. I do it a lot. I do a lot more, I think, for my veteran and military clients than I do for those that are not, or at least a lot more education, a lot more reaching out the hand, versus when someone hasn't been maybe in the military. It's just a different relationship.
It is. And I find a lot of military, because I interview um, I interview entrepreneurs and people that are designing the life that they want. And I posed out, and you responded to one of those, hey, I'm looking to fill interview slots. And there's a lot of veteran entrepreneurs out there
Yeah.
versus civilian entrepreneurs. Why do you think vets are out there just kind of hell bent on forging their own path?
I think there's a lot of really different reasons why, but I think probably the most important reasons are the experiences that we have versus what people have went to, like maybe college and didn't go into the military, right? Like, so maybe the traditional path of what you might see right now. So I think people just have a different viewpoint on how they want to handle their life, and people are getting a lot more educated too. I think as well, and a lot of people realize that if you really do start a business and you do it the right way, you can become very successful. You can make some decent cash, but most importantly is that you can live a better life than you can. Nobody likes going to that job where they look for Friday every week. And if your business is running like that, then you need to go find something else. But not too many people's own business. They go, man, I can't wait until the weekend so I can quit, so I can stop working my own job. Like,
Right.
I think it's just we have a different viewpoint on how we want to handle the rest of our lives.
And it's really something to be able to sit down and talk with someone. You have really gone out and designed your idea of success in the life that you have. How is your work-life balance?
It's gotten better, and initially, especially in the last I'd say probably the end of the first year and going into my second year in business is really when things were just coming to that critical breaking point of, hey, do you chase this business or do you stop here and just stay working full time? That's a part, and a lot of people are going to have to deal with that. And sometimes it may take years. Fortunately for me, it didn't take years. It took maybe probably a good year of just maybe 16, 18-hour days working, managing, helping out with family and still doing it. And it's tough, but once you get to that point where you know that you have reliable sources of income every month and it's predictable, that's when you need to start outsourcing some of those functions that you're doing too much of so you can have that work-life balance. That's the whole point of being a business owner. I don't live to work 18-hour days. I don't want to
Right.
do that for the rest of my life. Eventually I'd like to just kind of oversee the function of a business, in 20 years, but that's still to come.
And what was that preparation when you were in that critical decision making moment of, okay, I can keep going, or I can take a much safer route and get a 9 to 5 and a constant paycheck?
Hmm.
And you decided, nope, I'm going to keep forging my path. I'm going to keep building this business. What was the preparation that you took in order to make sure that was the right decision for you?
So I went for me with a seasonal trend, and I think that that's important to time out if you're at that spot. Is when is the time that you're going to get a good amount of revenue to be able to sustain the rest of the times it may not while you're continuing to build. So for me, I did it right in the beginning of January, like right before tax season. So for the 6 to 8 months prior to that, I've been putting in a lot of sweat equity, a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of conversations with people just to build hopefully potential clients for during the tax season that would allow me to lift off the ground and stay that way for some time. So I think that, being able to time it with a trend is important.
Well, we are actually closing in on our hour. We have about
It is, isn't
15
it?
more minutes. Yes, this went by really fast.
I think so.
And you gave us a lot of good information. You gave us a lot of, I think, a lot of things that we can take back to the table and kind of reflect on, put into play, really think about. Is there anything that you feel needs to just be said to those that are wanting to venture out on their own, or in that moment of do I or don't I?
Mm-hmm. I think the most important part that you have to, thing that needs to be really said is anything that you're going to do, you can do it. It's not going to be easy. So no matter what it is that you do, if you've done something for 30 years and you decide to go out on your own, and I see that a lot, especially with like the rehab construction industry. A lot of times people work for those for 30 years and go out on their own. It's not easy, but to me, it's just fun. I think that's the thing, is you need to have fun with what you're doing. If it's stressing you out, take a step back and try again another time.
What's the one thing that, I know that there's a multitude of things. There's probably
Sure.
a plethora of things, but what is your top two factors that you've seen that dictate a business being successful or unsuccessful? What are those
I
top
think
two?
Sure. I think the number one, and then this is very important to me, is your customer relationships. You have to treat those customers like you want them to come back, right? So you got to treat them like people that you would want to have beer with, go sit down and eat dinner with. You want to be able, for the most part, especially in the service industry, really that's important. So if you're providing personal services to somebody, you have to have that person like you, and it needs to be genuine. It can't be faked. People will see fake over time, especially if you have two
Mm-hmm.
people that talk to each other and go, hey, he doesn't treat me like that. He treats me totally different. And you can know that somebody isn't genuine in the way that they treat people. And I think that that's number one, is just what would you do if you were that customer and you just did your action to them? Would you be happy or would you be mad? I think that's probably my number one thing. And then my number two would be is I would say pay attention to your money and keep it tight in the beginning. Even as you keep going, just because you make $100,000 a year doesn't mean that you need to spend $90,000 a year.
Right. How much money would you say needs to be in reserve when they start? I think that there's a common belief that you need to, before you venture out on your own, you need to have 6 months of expenses and savings until you turn. Would you agree with that or not?
I don't think I would. And I think the reason why I would not agree with some, especially that long too, is because, I mean, if you think of for most people's living expenses, let's say they have bills for about $3,000 a month, right? So if you do that for 6 months, that's $18,000. Someone that doesn't have a very good job, a well-paying job, may never build that up. And if they do, they're probably going to spend it on something else. So I don't think that having reserves necessarily is indicative of being able to succeed. I think the thing that people should be aiming for is that instead of waiting for over time for the business to become successful, is that they should start off that way. So, work as long as you can, side by side with the business until you know that if I let go of my training wheels, am I okay? Do I have enough contracted revenue every month? Do I have enough predictability in my month-to-month sales and income that I can go ahead and just do it?
That was not the answer I was expecting from you.
I'm sure it wasn't.
I was expecting, well, that's nice, but if you can get a year, then that would be better. That was,
Yeah.
I think, what most
I would
people
never have been able to. I could hardly save up 3 weeks worth of pay if I were to try to do that. I would still be doing the same job. And I think that's what a lot of people hear, and they keep trying it and they go, well, it's not working. Well, that's because that's probably not the best goal for someone to set, I don't think.
Would you be interested? I'm going to put you on the spot. I hope you don't mind. Would you be interested in doing a follow-up interview with me on just concentrating how to make the leap and how
that'd
to
be
build?
cool. Yeah, because it's interesting because it's so different for a lot of people. So I think if you kind of look at different people who do that and what their situation was like, and maybe if it's similar to yours, then that would be a path to follow. Because my advice may not be the best for another person, but there could be 10 others out there who are like, dude, that is exactly where I'm at right now.
I'm so glad you said yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we are going to frame up those details, and I would like to get that done in the next, 2 to 3 weeks, and we could possibly do another. It won't have to be on a Sunday, but I think I feel like it's been an hour, but we've only scratched the surface.
Right. I would agree.
Well, do you have any big plans going on for the rest of the day?
I think I'm gonna have the in-laws over. We're gonna cook some lasagna and garlic bread for dinner tonight. So I usually like to try to do like a family Sunday is usually what we do.
That's awesome. I'm going to let you get back to it. I appreciate so much you taking the time out of your schedule to spend that with us.
Going on here. I love being able to talk with people, and it's just fun to be on a podcast and get to hear, what other people say or what other people's responses are or what their questions are. Everyone's got different questions, and that's the thing I think people don't expect about when they go from one podcast to the next is that it might have like one guest might be the same on different podcasts, but they're going to be different questions. Different things.
Yeah, you're kind of doing the podcast circuit right now.
Yeah, I've done a couple of them. It's
interviewing.
Yeah.
I'm glad. So how can people get in touch with you?
The easiest way would be go to my website at bmcaccountingllc.com, and you can view all the services I offer. There's a couple free tools on there. You can schedule a consult. You can do a lot of different things on my website. That's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me.
All right. Perfect. Well, I'm going to go ahead and put those links in. Everything will be updated tomorrow. We are I'm actually, if you can tell from my background, not in my home office. We are in the middle of mid-northern California somewhere. We're doing a college tour this weekend. So We're hitting like 3 or 4 colleges. The kid is going to have to make some decisions coming up.
Yeah,
so
have fun with that. I got a long time. I only have a 2-year-old, so I've got some time until I got to make those choices.
Yep, you do. You have some time. It goes by like that, though.
I bet it does.
Well, enjoy your Sunday. For those that have joined us, thanks for joining. And Brandyn, again, I can't thank you enough for the hour that you've given us.
I appreciate that. Thanks for having me.
All right, I'll be emailing you tomorrow so we can set up another time.
Cool. All right. That'll work for me.
Okay, everybody have a great day.
Take care.